Welcome to The Patient Physician, a space for doctors to explore their physical, mental, and financial wellness. Your peers and industry leaders will destigmatize institutional perceptions while redefining success, money, and personal care. Get ready to pull back the curtain because here, you are both patient and physician.
Welcome, everyone, to The Patient Physician. My name is Paul Smith, and I am joined today by my co-host, Chris Fulbright. Good to see you as always, sir.
Great seeing you, my friend.
So, Chris, I was thinking we've been visiting with and meeting and talking to thousands of physicians over the years. And whether they're in training, they're in practice, there seems to be a consistent theme. And I'm going to put you on the spot there. What would you say is the most consistent theme about what we hear from people about what they're missing or lacking?
Oh, goodness. My first reaction depends on where they are in the training process or their career. But it seems to be that as our physicians are going through their career, coming out of training, or even the first few years in their career, there's been so much information on the medical side that maybe they feel they haven't been trained on, whether it be how to build a business or the finance side or the business side. But what's been interwoven, I don't know where you're headed with this, but interwoven through has been, how do I just handle it all? Right? They've gone from this series of literally since middle school, high school, college, medical fellows, like the whole thing, and everything's been scripted out. Then all of a sudden you complete training, you fall into the world, and now you're responsible for everything. And there's this part about, well, hold on, where's the playbook? Where's the skill? And I think for a lot of, as I think about it, it's that overwhelm of how do I handle everything? How do I keep it tied together? Just right over the top.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
You know, the education on basic finances, your business, work life. And we even talked to somebody one time that said basically how to be an adult, adulting as they put it. And it's just fascinating to hear things like that because you've got this person who's so highly educated and intelligent, and then they're just now out trying to figure out normal life because they put everything else on hold. And that's not a knock on the training system, by the way. It's just that there's so much to cover during the training program. And so oftentimes the curriculum is just so heavy, there's just no extra bandwidth. And so because of this huge gap, that's why I'm extremely excited to introduce our next guest, because he is helping to close that gap. Joining us today is Dr. Ben Reinking, a board-certified general pediatrician and pediatric cardiologist. As a master certified physician development coach and founder of The Developing Doctor, he helps physicians develop the skills, mindset, and resources to achieve their career goals. Welcome, Dr. Reinking.
Thank you, Paul and Chris. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you could make time in between doing this, and you're still teaching and working as faculty, and you were saying rounding. So your plate is full. Can you start on giving us a little background and tell your story of how you even started to discover coaching?
Yeah, it was sort of accidentally on purpose, I guess. And so when I was going through training, I think you actually touched on a lot of things that resonated with me as you were just talking. But when I went through training, I was on the conveyor belt. So, I went from college to medical school to residency to fellowship. I didn't take any gap years. I went straight through. And there was this great system in place that, essentially had guardrails on that once I was on the conveyor belt, I got through. And to get through, I sort of just approached it like I did a hard workout. And so I was a swimmer growing up and all the way through college. And I think anyone who's done any competitive athletics, you have this sort of rinse and repeat mentality where you go in, you just grind it out. You crawl out. In my case, it was crawl out of the pool. You're exhausted. And then the next day you're like, oh, that was awesome. I'm going to do it again. I did the exact same thing with my training. You're able to sort of chunk up training into 2-week or 4-week or half a year blocks to just kind of plow through the hard stuff and really focus on what it is that you need to learn to be a good doctor. And then when you get out, you're kind of jump into the deep end, and all of a sudden you're responsible for what happens, how it happens, but probably more importantly, why it happens. And that mentality of sort of grinding it out worked for me for a long time because I had a good support system at work and at home as well. And then there was just sort of a series of unfortunate events where the wheels just fell off the cart. So my professional team at work fell apart. I'm a pediatric cardiologist. We're dependent upon some highly skilled individuals in the surgical suite, in the anesthesia suite, in the intensive care unit. And for whatever reason, those pieces of the puzzle kind of changed rather quickly, which meant a lot of the people that I worked with left. And so all of a sudden at work, I found myself with way more work to do in an environment where it was really challenging to do it. At the same time, my parents both had significant illnesses at the same time. And, I was well into adulthood, so it's not like I was dependent upon them, but I wanted to help them out. And so that was sort of a personal life stressor. And then my family and I actually built a home, which was a wonderful thing. But the option that a lot of people look at when they have professional struggles is, all right, I'm going to get another job. I'm just going to move. I'm going to start over. And that wasn't an option for me because we had just made this big personal financial investment. And so I was stuck. And I grounded out. So I put my head down, I worked harder. And it happened to be that I was in charge of our fellowship training program at that time. And I set up just a debrief session. We'd had a really challenging week. I had a couple trainees come into my office in tears because they were exhausted and worried about kind of how things were going. And so I set up a debrief session. And the person leading the session said, it's normal to feel down. It's normal to have difficulty sleeping. It's normal to sort of have changes in your day-to-day routine when you're stressed. But if all of those changes are around for longer, for weeks or months, then that's not normal. That is an actual problem and you need to get help for that. For whatever reason, that was my wake-up call that this isn't right. This isn't how I want to live my life. So after that experience, I tried all the things. So I tried going on medication to see if that would help my mood. I went to a psychiatrist and thought maybe I needed just some therapy, exercising. I tried sleeping more. And those things sort of helped. But the problem was I was doing the same thing over and over and over. It didn't actually change how I approach things. Eventually stumbled upon a coach, and I honestly walked into the coaching session thinking, this is not going to help me. Like, this seems like a bunch of mystical made up stuff that isn't going to work. And in fact, my assignment when I left the first coaching session was to just walk into work thinking of 3 things that I was thankful for as I walked into the door. And again, I had that voice in my head that said, there's no way this is going to work. I don't get it. I'm a very black and white kind of guy. And this is not black and white. And sure enough, that was actually the thing that helped me start off my day with a little different mindset. And I mean, it's not like it was that day I was better, but all of a sudden I approached problems slightly differently. And then, it was sort of this building process. I was like, I'm just not doing this right. I did not have the skill set I needed to sort of work in this really challenging profession and sort of navigate the ups and downs like I thought I did.
So just starting your day by thinking of 3 positive things that you're grateful for. That was your first
That was my first assignment.
Really?
She's like, yeah. She's like, I think one of the things I said was, I'm just walking in. As soon as I walk in the hospital, I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to be here. This is going to be a horrible day. And, I'm not like a cranky, crusty guy. And I was walking in cranky and crusty, and you know how the day goes when you walk in like that, right?
Sure.
And so it was just
it always gets better.
Right. So that was the start. And then, it went a lot deeper than that.
I want to back up a second. Where did you even begin to think, okay, I'm going to go find a coach? Because you'd already tried all these other things, sleeping better, medication. Where did the coach idea even come from? And then how did you seek that out?
I mean, I was fortunate that the provider I was seeing, so the therapist that I was seeing was actually a coach. And she said quite pointedly, like, you actually don't need what I'm providing you. You need a different approach. And that approach is coaching. And she gave me a couple articles to read, knowing that I was a pretty concrete black and white guy. And I was like, okay, let's try this. So the next session, she kind of changed her approach. And that's how I stumbled onto it.
How was it that it clicked for you? The difference between a therapist is here's what I need to process, or however, I don't put words in your mouth, versus a coach. What was the gap there? And then what had you lean towards coaching versus I have a therapist that I'm working with?
I think for me, the thing that helped was, and again, this is a generalization, but therapy sort of focuses on your past and things that happened in your past that are affecting your present. And I mean, I'm really fortunate that I had a really great upbringing. Like, I've had positive experiences in my life. And so it's not like there was anything that I could hang my hat on that said, oh, this is why I'm struggling right now. It was really, how do I approach this new challenge in my life? And how do I move forward into the future with a different skill set? So coaching is really sort of looking at the problem and saying right now and saying, all right, how do you want to solve this? And the power lies with the person being coached, as opposed to looking at something in the past and saying, oh, this is what happened. This is why you're struggling with this.
Yeah, that's
I think that alone is pretty insightful.
100. Yeah.
I know, Chris, you've been a big advocate of coaching, and you're a great coach yourself in terms of how we work together. But the way that you've verbalized, looking forward versus looking backward. There's only so much that you can do looking backward, and that's where therapy can be helpful. But what are you going to do with that knowledge? Okay, I isolated it out. I know what this is due to. So now what do I do with it? And that's where you're saying coaching really has come in and been helpful for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm pretty goal oriented. And I think a lot of people in medicine are goal oriented, and having that kind of forward looking approach was just really helpful for me, and somehow made this thing that felt really not concrete, very, very more concrete, and something that, all right, I can dive into this. And I like this approach of making this better by taking small steps.
So you start your day, 3 positive things. Where does it go from there?
Yeah. Then it was just a matter of, all right, I'm in this challenging environment right now at work. What can I do to make it better? Right? There's so much that's out of my control. I can't control who my colleagues are. I can't control who leaves or who doesn't, but I can control how I show up every day. And maybe I don't have the skill set to lead the team that I thought I did, or maybe I don't have the skill set to communicate effectively when things are really stressful. And maybe it's just a matter of learning those things so that I can be better at doing my job because I developed some new skills that I didn't realize I needed.
Yeah, I'm always curious about this, Dr. Ben. And for those listening, he gave us permission to call him Dr. Ben, so we're not just pivoting here.
Or Bob, as we
found out.
I respond to anything,
met each
really.
other. That's right. He's not really sure who we're talking to. When you started down the coaching path, right, and you started exploring that, you've talked about high achievement, and you've talked about swimming and grinding through, which is a term that we hear so much. It's like, if I can just grind through this next season of school or whatever, late nights or rounds or whatever it is. I'm just curious because we think professionally, I'm going to get coaching, but you also brought up, hey, we built a house. My mom and dad both had illnesses. We had things. Does the coaching that you experienced then and then what you provide now, does it stay in the professional sleeve, or do you combine the two and say, hey, for true coaching, we need to be able to blend your personal and your professional to be able to have you look at things differently? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I honestly think it depends on the goal of the person being coached. I think there are some people who really prefer to kind of keep these buckets separate. And that's one of the things I really like about coaching, is that it really is truly driven by the person being coached. But it can be a really effective way to sort of integrate sort of your work and home life and personal and professional, kind of how you show up in both locations. Yeah.
So now you've gotten down the road a little bit further and you're learning how to develop yourself from a leadership standpoint, but eventually it evolves into not just getting coaching yourself, but then decide that you want to go down that road and help others through this. So you become a master certified physician development coach, which is a mouthful. So can you tell us what is that, and how did you go about deciding that you wanted to go down that path and start to help others in this way?
Yeah. So I part of my job, I've worked in academics my whole career, and so a big chunk of my job is working with learners and working with other people, and that includes at that point in my career, I was far enough along the career trajectory that I was also working with other faculty, and I just realized that what I was learning would be so helpful for everyone that's going through the system, and because of my position at work, that I would benefit from those skills. So initially, I just jumped into some coach training just because I thought it would help me be better at the other parts of my job besides seeing patients. There are all sorts of coach training programs out there. And so I took just a quick weekend course, which was just focused on sort of positive psychology and relating to others, and just to get a taste of it. And there's something about it that just kind of resonated with sort of how I view mentoring and advising and kind of helping other people along. And it was just enough of a frame shift from how I was taught to do that I thought, all right, I'm going to really do this. And there's a coach training program called the Physician Coaching Institute that focuses on just training people to help physicians. And that's where I jumped in and got my longer sort of 6 to 9 months kind of training.
So you go through this and now you're not only helping develop and make your own life better from a professional and personal standpoint, but now you're developing doctor. And so you're going out there and not just helping people through your program, you're trying to bring this out even further. So walk us through the development of that and the developing doctor itself and your hopes there.
Yeah, I initially went through the training, kind of like I said, and I thought this will just help me be better at my current job. I mean, I really want to help other people and maybe allow me to sort of break the cycle of medical education a little bit and sort of change how we approach things. And honestly, that was a pretty big goal, right? So anytime you work in a big institution, it's really hard to enact change, I think, in a big institution in a way that feels like it's meaningful. And I think through the process of learning how to coach and being coached myself, I just recognized that I also wanted to stretch and grow in a different way. And this was just a perfect opportunity to sort of learn a new skill set and also maybe just reach a different audience than I have the ability to reach. And so it was kind of the combination of just personal growth as well as the recognition that I know there are people out there that could benefit from what I learned because they went through the exact same system that I did. And so that was the drive. Yeah.
And there's several issues that you're working on and helping people of different categories, whether they're students or residents, fellows, or even physicians in practice. So some of the key issues and topics you're addressing: preventing burnout, work-life harmony, shifting that mindset, like you talked about, even stuff like daily decisions and mental health, mentoring. Of all those, where do you find yourself spending the most time working with individuals?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think the thing that maybe is the biggest hurdle and that takes the most time is just giving people the permission to figure out what's important to them. And so everyone starts in healthcare, and I think whether you're an administrator or someone at the front desk or a health provider, I think everyone enters this field because they want to help other people. And on the physician side, there's also just the challenge. Like, I know this is going to be really hard and I want to challenge myself and see if I can do it because I know I can do it, but I also want to see if I can do it. At the end, there's also just some financial security that comes with working in healthcare. Again, really, no matter where you are on the system, I mean, there is some relative job security. And I think it's allowing people to reconnect with sort of the altruistic nature of why they went into medicine, because at some point that gets weaponized a little bit where someone says, hey, you can stay after 5 and see that extra patient. It'll be good for the patient. So, you can do that. It'll be good for the patients. So that kind of gets twisted a little bit. The challenge piece, I think the grind kind of makes the challenge seem less fun. And then people don't like talking about financial security a lot, but our well-being is tied up into our jobs. And so if you're not happy in your job and then you're worried about your well-being, and it becomes this big messy ball of, I don't even know what I want anymore.
They're all interwoven, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the first step, which takes sometimes a while, is what is it that's really important to you? And let's figure out how you can honor what it is that you value. And then we'll figure everything else out after that.
Do you find that it really takes a minute? That seems like such a simple question, but I can absolutely see where you maybe even have to say, no, I want you to dig further. Maybe the first answer that they give you of think about yourself is just regurgitated from something they heard, but asking them to look further and dig a little bit more. It's covered up, right? Especially with what you do, because you're taking care of everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And so you're never focused on yourself. And now you're asking them to do that.
And that's exactly right. And sometimes it's as simple as someone saying, hey, I really want to spend more time with my family, but I'm getting home at 6:30, 7 o'clock every night. And then you say, well, why are you getting home at 6:30 or 7 o'clock every night? Well, I stay between 5 and 7 and I have to work on charts. Well, who says you have to work on charts between 5 and 7? And why are you working? It's sort of this, you say you want to be with your family, but then you're not. And what is it in there that's the block, so to speak? And how can we address that?
Have you found more physicians open to hiring a coach such as yourself? Is that something that you're seeing more physicians embrace in their careers?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit generational. I mean, I have people that I work with that are like, oh, you're doing this. I read your Instagram posts, and I think that's really helpful. That's probably as far as it's going to go. Definitely the students, and I get regular emails from students and residents that I work with in my job, as well as from the outside, that are saying, hey, I'm struggling. And interestingly, I've recently been contacted by a couple of parents whose kids are just entering medical training, and they're like, we want you to help our kid out because we know that this is going to be tough and we want them to be okay. And it's probably the other end of the spectrum. I mean, people that are at my point in their career where maybe it's a little bit harder to rethink how you do things or to accept that this approach might work. Yeah.
As high achievers and people that are obviously achievement minded, I think you using that term several times as we've talked now, that in other areas, whether it be sports or you're swimming, right, you hired a coach. It would have been odd for an excellent swimmer to never have a coach, to just do it on their own, to go out and just swim. One of the things that I was thinking about, it goes back to the original question you asked me, Paul, but then as Dr. Ben's gone through this, we've had some other guests that have talked about this burnout that they've had, or they were so accustomed to having all the right answers all the time that to almost admit weakness, meaning I'm not handling this well, felt that they were exposing a weakness, and they hid from the quote unquote label of seeing a therapist. And so they would pull back from that. We've talked to a couple people now that have said, no, I had to lean into that. And once I pulled that veil back and said, no, this is okay. I need this. I'm listening to you talk, and the coaching aspect does come at it at a different prism. I come back to something you said, I think the first time when we were talking to you, that you were asking the wrong question. That I think the coach came to you and said, hey, Dr. Ben, I think you're just asking the wrong question about the stress level or the achievement or something. And I think the coach, by peeling that first layer back of saying, why are you a doctor? I mean, it's interesting. Paul and I do visit with a lot of physicians. And sometimes it's like that path was started a decade or 2 decades ago, and they almost have forgotten why they started that path. But they're economically at a situation they have to stay. So having a coach like yourself to step in with the experience to say, let's not let the next decade look like this past decade, or even the next year look like this year. And so I'm fascinated by the label difference, but also the forward-looking psychological and behavioral change in medicine. The burnout is something we continuously hear about in all walks of life. I think of high achievers that if you get to a certain point and you have burnout or whatever that emotion is, you come to two options. I'm either going to quit because obviously I'm doing something wrong now because I've been achieving up until now. But you're saying from coaching, you maybe go a different route. Maybe we're not quitting anymore. Maybe we're making adjustments and staying on that path. Did I understand that right when you talk about coaching forward looking rather than anchoring back in your past?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think,
Okay.
and I think you nailed it when you said people get to a point when they struggle, and then all of a sudden, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
This was hard, but I'm supposed to be able to do this, and so because I can't do this anymore because it's not working, then I'm a failure, and so I shouldn't do this job anymore. Like I need to make a huge seismic shift in my life because I'm struggling and I can't do this anymore. Sometimes maybe that is the right answer, right? For some people, it may be that they need to make a big change in their life and jump jobs or jump careers. But my experience was not that. And most of the people I coach, actually, it's not that. It's like, you may be able to stay in your current job. You just need to do it differently. And maybe it's something as simple as focusing on one specific aspect of patient care that you like. If you really value long-term relationships with your patients, then set up a way in your practice where you can work with patients in that way a little bit. Or if you want a little more free time, I mean, I know many physicians who cut back their workload by 5% or 10%, and that gives them just a half day off, right? But it's just enough that it gives them margin to do something else. And so there are lots of little ways to make changes that make a big impact.
That's fantastic. Yeah. What a difference in perspective. That it does hold true, as Paul said, interwoven between professional, I think, whether it be finance or our relationships. If we're not happy in one area, I understand the siloed approach and keeping different sleeves, but I also think that it does pour over and how difficult it is to create those firewalls between different areas of our life as we go through it.
We're so habit driven though, that you're talking about very simple things that when you hear it, you go, that's so obvious. Your example earlier of reading charts from 5 to 7 and, I want to spend more time with family. Why can't I do that? Well, the chances are pretty good because most people defer even having families because of the training. And hats off to those that do, by the way. I don't know how you do that and then try to raise a child in the middle of all of it. But those habits, the working habits, the schedules that they learn to maintain were probably pre-family. And so now you add in a family and you're wondering, well, how do I make that work? Well, you actually just have to change it because you're trying to work in an old schedule, an old behavior, an old habit with a new situation. We're using that old information to apply to a new life and wondering why it's not working.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that the difficulty is no one else in your immediate circle, right? Your family, your colleagues, the support staff in clinic, no one's going to call you on that. They're just going to let you keep doing what you're doing. And I think that's one of the values of having a coach is the coach's job is to kind of call you out on those little things and see like, this doesn't quite add up. Let's figure out why that doesn't add up and how can we work through this.
Well, and there's several people out there that'd be more than happy to let you take the work if you're there.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right.
You're going to
Yeah.
stay late? Sure, I'll let you cover that. Right. So it is good to kind of recoach yourself. Okay, I gotta focus on my family. Actually, just do that and allow yourself. Do you find that that's something that's kind of a challenge? Is getting people to actually buy into allowing themselves to go home and spend time with their family? They want it, but there is a difference. There's a difference between wanting to spend more time and then actually doing it because of maybe there's a little bit of guilt and I've been doing
Yeah.
this so long. It's just the way I should keep doing it. And I'm going to let somebody down. How much of that is in play?
Oh, yeah, that's hard. Change is hard. It's hard to do those things, and it's hard to get out of, like you said, those old habits and those sort of thoughts in your head that you think are facts, but they're really just thoughts and beliefs that you've kind of generated over time. And it's not actually a rule of nature that you have to stay at work as late as you do. It's just a choice that you made, and you've done it for so long, and it feels like something that you should do. And so the danger of should, I like that, right? Should you do it or could you do it? And I think it's just learning how to think differently, which when you say things like this out loud, like you said, it sounds so simple, but it's really not simple for people to do. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And then
I've heard from some person before I was actually getting coaching from them on business, and they said other people will should all over you, and you end up carrying them. And his language was, "You're going to carry their monkey," but they will should all over you. You should be staying late. You should be
Yeah.
taking this class. You should be doing this. You should be running a marathon. And it carries no weight on them. And they transfer it. Now, in my mind, the mental space is going through here thinking, I should be doing all these things. And if I'm not getting all these things done, then I am failing, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the noise that happens, especially if maybe we even see someone else that we think is doing that. Right? And
Yeah,
we're like,
yeah.
well, Dr. Ben's getting it all done. In fact, he's got all this going on and he's working late and he has family and he has kids. Like, maybe I should be able to accomplish that. Well, they don't think maybe their goals and your goals are different.
Right.
Right. And so we have to be able to think through. In your coaching, have you found that a rhythm works better? Like a meeting with someone once a week, or is it once a month? Is it a commitment over a course of a year? Tell the audience more about your program and how they would benefit from coaching.
Yeah. It always starts with just a consultation, just a meeting, just to kind of get to know each other and make sure that I'm a good fit for them and they're a good fit for me. And so there's just an initial conversation that is no obligation. And that's just a common approach in coaching. And then after that initial visit, I put together sort of a program. And so usually they're 3 to 6 months in length. I like to meet about every other week. I think it's hard to do this every week and have the time to reflect on changes and progress. And so I like about an every other week visit with a little bit of suggested homework in between sometimes, or just kind of individual work. And I do think it works best if there's a little bit of a commitment in terms of timeline, like an expectation that this is going to be a 3-month process or this is going to be a 6-month process. I don't think coaching is effective if it's done in sort of one-off sessions, unless you already have an established relationship and it's something where someone pops in and is like, hey, I've got this going on. Can we just talk through this? I know you really well. You know kind of my background.
Have you found being able to do Zoom or virtual meetings, or do you find out your coaching works better when you're one-on-one and you can feel the energy between the people? Is there a difference for you there?
Yeah, I think Zoom is great. Zoom is great for coaching. I don't think it has to be in person. I do like in-person coaching. I think in this virtual world, we all kind of miss that contact a little bit, but I do think coaching works really well over the virtual space. Yeah. And there's some coaches that still coach exclusively over the phone, that they don't do anything in person, which I struggle to do now that we have cameras and stuff, but some people like that approach too.
How do you keep yourself from burning out with your new success coaching? Right? You added on a whole nother business line for yourself, which takes time, energy, processing through. You're meeting someone, you're hearing about everything that's going on there. That mental bandwidth has to come from somewhere. How do you keep yourself from going, oh, look, I've got something new. Let's just cake layer that back on top of my everything else I've got going on, and you put yourself right back in a situation where
I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think that's a great question because you have your own stuff. Now, how are you preventing taking on their stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about it because I'm afraid I'm going to worry about your stuff too. I've got my own problems. Go talk to somebody else.
Yeah, there's not room. I've got plenty of my own baggage that those storerooms are full that I don't have room to take it on. So I created a little bit of margin. I did cut back my FTE a little bit, so I'm not completely full time. So I have a day that is designated just to coaching or to myself, and I limit the number of clients that I work with at any one time. So I won't have more than 6 coaching sessions in a week, which is a lot. Usually I like to keep it around 3. Mm-hmm.
How long is a good coaching session?
Yeah, I block off a full hour. I usually
Okay.
try to wrap things up around the 45-minute mark. Some people are done in 30 minutes. Like you get through things, and in 30 minutes, all right, I know what I'm doing. I'm ready to get off this call. But yeah, we block off a full hour. Mhm.
Have you had a problem with getting somebody to take action? I assume people stay with you and do it, but then have you had that event happen where you've kind of said, I can't help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely people where maybe it's a mismatch, right? Like maybe we weren't the right coach and coachee to kind of work together. But sure, I mean, change is hard, and sometimes, especially in the limited timeline, if you've been doing something for years or decades, even, and then in a 3-month period, you're expecting things to be magically different. I mean, that's also not realistic. But I think the goal is to set people up with a skill set that when they leave the coaching sort of time period, that they at least have the skill set to sort of navigate things a little bit differently. And I just like to use as like guardrails or like training wheels where you can wobble a little bit, but you have a
Yeah.
little bit of a different equilibrium that you can get back on course.
Yeah. I just wondered if sometimes if there's some resistance, and that probably would mean that you need that therapist first before they come see
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So go see
absolutely.
them. And when
Yeah.
you work that out, then come back to me.
Yeah, I've had a few people who I've worked with who were sent to work with a coach, and I think those tend to be the people where it's a little bit harder to make big
Yeah.
strides because it feels a little bit punitive. And I think it works best when people view it as a developmental kind of
Mhm.
opportunity as opposed to like something that they have to do because someone said so.
Do you see younger people leaning into coaching, or do you see it across the board where people are like, "Hey, I want to get better where I'm at. Dr. Ben has offers something where I think I can better my life and myself." Where is there an age specific that you're seeing more people lean into you?
Interesting. It does seem like right now it's more sort of the mid career folks.
Okay.
I think it has as much to do with life circumstance as it is age a little bit. But I think the other thing is a lot of the people that I've been working with lately really seem to like medicine. I mean, at the core, they
Mhm.
really do like being a healthcare provider and like being a physician. It's just that they can't see a path forward, and that's what the real struggle is. Is I want to keep doing this, but I just don't know how I can keep doing this, and I'm a failure because of that. Yeah.
Paul and I've actually talked about quite a bit with different teams is the physicians we talk to love the doctor part of what they do. But after doing this for 15, 20, 25 years, whatever it is, they are now in a season where they have to see 25, 30, 35 or more patients a day to be able to pay the bills. And they don't get that one-on-one interaction. And they don't get that part of it, which so the only way I can do better here is to do more. And that is the treadmill, I think, that leads
Yep.
any of us to that burnout. Is that something that you've seen as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Where
Okay.
you can turn the crank and turn the crank, but then there's a point where it doesn't work anymore. And I think that's where people feel like what they want to do and what they're doing are not the same thing.
Is there a solution there, you think?
Some of it it's hard because some of it is baked into the system, and
Yeah.
it's not like one of the hard things about coaching, and one of the reasons I think physicians and just people in general are resistant to coaching is usually many of people's the things that contribute to burnout are external, and they're not easily changed. They're sort of, especially in healthcare, they're sort of baked into the healthcare system, and so it's hard to sit down with someone and say, all right, let's change how you're approaching this, when without recognizing that I know that the things outside of you are kind of messed up right now, and it feels not right to say it's on you to fix it. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But there's always seems to be a way to make it work, to make it function in a way that is closer to what aligns with someone's values than what it is that they're currently doing. And it's just figuring out what that is for each individual that's hard.
Your site says that your key focus is empowering physicians to thrive despite the challenges in the healthcare system. And I think that thrive is a fascinating word to use in this sentence. It's not just preventing burnout or getting by or getting to the next phase or the next week. It's figuring out a situation, a solution to expand and become colorful in your life and feel great about what you're doing, and almost kind of knowing the word thrive elicits a lot more than just, hey, I feel successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the goal, right? I mean, it's you don't want to just show up every day and just show up. I mean, that's no fun. You didn't go through all this training and all this work, and that's just not the point of our lives either, right? It's to just kind of show up every day. You got to figure out a way to live your life fully, and I think that's what thriving really is about. Mhm.
And it seems like there's a bit of an excitement behind that. You're looking forward to, kind of like a
Yeah,
kid at
yeah.
Christmas, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the goal is a lot of people go into healthcare, I think, in part because of the challenge. And there's a point where that challenge causes the butterflies in your stomach, right? The pre-race jitters and sort of the excitement of like, I'm going to do this new thing. And when it gets to the point where it's a pit in the center of your stomach and it's sort of a feeling of dread, then we need to rethink that and figure out how we can get the butterflies back and get rid of that pit in the middle of your stomach.
We were talking about just thinking differently, mental health strategies. Can you give us an example of what that would look like for a physician that's out there in terms of just an individual trying to make some difference?
Yeah. I think there are a couple things. People talk about mindfulness and meditation a lot, and I will be the first one to say that I have trouble sitting still and like calming my mind. And I think there are several people that are like that out there who can't imagine sitting down and meditating. But one thing that I found that works for me is I do sort of a walking meditation where if I'm just really distracted and can't focus, actually just going for a walk and counting my steps a little bit and helps me just focus in on something and gets rid of the thoughts and helps me solve problems. I also like in a busy clinic, just a big inhale and exhale every time you touch a doorknob before you go in to see a new patient. It's just breathe it in, breathe it out. It's a new encounter, and just some of those tiny little things, which again sometimes seem silly, I think, to people, but they make a huge difference.
Where are you finding the most impact to train and equip young doctors? Chris asked a question in terms of like the age categories, and we have talked about how it may be just changing that behavior. But it seems like what you're doing right now, if you can teach the actual behavior of looking at yourself and looking at what you're doing, maybe that would be better suited to start earlier on. And so
Hmm.
is the impact of learning some of these behaviors of auditing yourself to make the change something that should be more in focus?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think learning some of these skills and training is really important. I think the hard part is like we had kind of mentioned is there's just so much to learn to be a physician that some of the stuff that seems a little bit softer sometimes gets pushed to the side and isn't focused on quite as much. The other struggle is how you work as a student and how you work as a resident or a fellow or a trainee is slightly different than how you work as an independent practitioner. And honestly, I don't completely know why that is, but it is just different when you start working on your own. I think it's probably the weight of making all of those decisions independently is probably what makes it different in
Mhm.
part. But yeah, I think learning some of these skills earlier in training would be really beneficial and helpful.
I've heard that several times that
Yeah.
the minute that you are there, you've graduated, you're an attending, it's almost more stressful. The buck stops with me, kind of the mentality. And I've seen and talked to a lot of people who've stayed in the academic system. They just weren't ready to sort of have that support system pulled away from them to go out into a smaller practice. And so it's very real, that additional stress. How do most people do you see these days that are coming out of that deal with that particular issue alone?
It's hard. There's no doubt that it's hard, and just dealing with that kind of increasing responsibility. I think there are some ways in training to help people prepare for that. We do what's called a pretending month, where we have them round as the attending without kind of someone physically present to chime in and help make the decision. And sometimes just that physical distance actually makes a little bit of difference and forces people to think differently than they would if I was standing right there over their shoulder. I think the other thing is considering how we ramp people on once they finish. You can't expect people to practice like someone who has been practicing for 20 years. And I know most people do not. So most people don't start with a full patient panel. But I think it's more than just panel size. It's giving them the space to talk about decisions and what does this look like when we want to bring someone on and we want to keep them on long term? How can we on ramp them differently for that first 6 months or a year so that at the end of that year they feel prepared to practice independently differently than they did when they finished training.
We live in this world, in my opinion, that we want instant reward. We want to see instant results. And I started thinking on the coaching where when you walked in with 3 pieces of gratitude or taking the deep breath, right? Was there a period that all of a sudden people started going, "Hey, Dr. Ben, something's different. Like you feel different. I have a different energy or whatever from you. You seem less stressed."
Yeah. I think the thing that I noticed was that people were saying hi to me more. that
Oh,
might sound
wow.
silly, but like
Almost
even
more
just
approachable then. Like
yeah,
you're
yeah. I think
interesting.
the
Yeah.
tension was down. You know, when you're busy and we're grinding away.
You
like,
know, a lot
we're
of
like,
people
stay
say
away
hi
from
to
them.
Chris more than me, by the way. So that may explain a lot.
This coaching, in fact, this whole podcast is for Paul.
That's right. I'm
all
doing
set up.
research. That's all this
That's
is.
right.
It's just research.
Yeah.
So you notice that. How do you also, when you bring do you call them client when someone who hires you? Are they called a client?
Yeah, a client. Yeah.
Client. Do you?
Bob.
They call them Bob.
Yeah.
Do you?
Bob.
Do you find that? Hey, I tried your take a deep breath trick at the doorknob. I don't feel any different. I'm still stressed out. Like, do you find that people are like, hey, it's Tuesday at 5 and I'm exhausted? Like, how do you deal with that as a coach?
Yeah. I'm just honest. I'm like, how long did it take you to get here? Right. So how long have you been doing things one way, and how long is it going to take to undo them? And I think sometimes just that acknowledgement is enough. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love the work. I think that it's so powerful that our doctors who have spent decades literally getting their mind and their knowledge to a place emotionally to be able to help us, that you're not forgetting yourself to take care of yourself. And I think that's some of the hardest part, that is, whether it be the stress or the drive or the focus or the external pressures, or maybe the anchoring from past events, that drive to succeed is what we hear a lot, right? It's coming from that thing. How do I live up to that? I applaud you for taking the time out to say, hey, one, I want to feel differently. That would have been a wonderful step, and we would have said congratulations, Dr. Ben, for helping yourself during this tough time. But you've taken that and said, how do I lean into it and how do I help others? That goes probably back to your reason of being in medicine. I want to help other people, and you're doing it on a scale, and the multiplier effect there of you helping other physicians that then help more patients, which then help other doctors, which help more patients. The multiplier effect of what you're doing for people has to just be extraordinary. The butterfly effect, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I never really stopped to think about it, but it is kind of cool when you put it that way. Is hopefully it has an impact, and we can maybe chip away and affect some real change in people's lives, but also in just kind of how we train physicians and the healthcare system in general. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure patient care improves too, just because people are excited to show up to work. They feel more energized.
But what if other doctors
themselves
aren't wanting to say hello to you? How do the patients feel? Right? Think about like that.
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, no, very true.
You're pediatrics, right? Like y'all are the fun ones, right? You're the ones who are happy, What if you're not? Like, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me, Bob.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing, as Chris was saying, just that you were looking for a solution for yourself. You find something, but then right back to it, you're out trying to help others with this, which is great. It is a butterfly effect and a ripple. Are you still using a coach?
Not regularly. No. I still, we email back and forth a little bit, but I'm not regularly using a coach. But there are leadership opportunities that come up and sort of different career opportunities that come up, and that honestly is the first thing that enters my mind: is if I do this, do I need to call this person again and sort of work on the new skill set, and will they tell me not to do this and guide me in a different direction? And so it does come up in my mind a lot. Yeah.
When you said you reach out, is it the same coach that you used before?
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. Sometimes you hear like, let's go to Tiger Woods or Pickens, right? They switch coaches. Well, what's interesting is you're saying, hey, even these different decisions, having that person to reach out to is valuable over a long period of time. That's a relational mentorship rather than, hey, let's finish this. Let's bundle it together. Here's your complete plan. You're now a new person. Good luck to you. I love the fact that there's that open line of communication. I've got something new going on in my life. Can I reach out to Dr. Ben, get his opinion? I want to get his thoughts on that. That's another positive impact you're making on people.
So before we wrap up, I didn't tell you, I also used to swim. So we had that in common. That's not relevant to anybody.
I've been waiting for that the entire time. Right?
Well, you swam too, Chris, right?
Not. I wore a different set of shorts than the two of you when I swim. Yes.
More fabric or less?
Yeah, less aerodynamic, I'll say. Yeah.
Fair.
But you know what? When you were talking about being in the pool and getting out, that resonated, and I just kept thinking, you get to the end of those laps, and it's like I just got to get to this, and getting that breath. just being able to get to the end, that speaks to me a lot. I think that some of those workouts were some of the hardest that I ever had to do. Sometimes you probably did 2-a-days too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's ridiculous. But anyway, I really appreciate your time and sitting down and talking with us today. I hope that after this, any audience members that are inspired to try to make change in their lives can reach out to you, and we'll put your contact information in the podcast notes. But before we wrap, we have the name of the show is The Patient Physician, and that was very purposeful. Can you tell us what hearing that phrase means to you?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think the first thing that comes to mind is this is a process, right? And so we have this, I think, mindset that we start training and then we're done and then life starts. But I think sort of like the developing doctor, I think growth is continual and it goes on throughout your life, and you just have to be a little patient and let things kind of grow and develop over time. And nothing's going to happen overnight.
It's a great reminder.
Yeah.
Dr. Ben, thank you again for your time. Loved having you on. And I just hope that more people continue to try to become better and seek you out. And if it's not you, it's somebody else that can help them make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to help anybody out there that wants to chat. So
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Ben.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
This conversation was brought to you by Physicians Resource Services, a firm supporting medical professionals to improve their financial situation and pursue their personal and professional goals. The Patient Physician is produced in Austin, Texas. Editing and sound design are in the hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network. Please email questions or show ideas to info@physiciansrs.com.